Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of An Anatomy of the Arts. I'm your host, Ethan Neville, and today I'm delighted to announce our next guest, Mr. Tyler Burkhart. How are you?
I'm great, man. How are you?
I'm great. So, can we just start with, you know, your journey into music, where you
Sure.
started?
Yep. Probably around 2012, I started getting interested in writing my own music. I had loved music all my life and listened to a lot of music, but um, one particular Christmas, my brother got me a USB mic. I think it was a blue Snowball. You just plug it into your computer. You can record directly. And I had a laptop. I had GarageBand and just started piecing songs together. They were really primitive at first, usually just two guitars, and trying to see like how I could make them
Yeah.
overlap in a cool way. And that kind of snowballed and got more into trying to record drums and stuff, and
Mm.
recorded a lot before I put anything out. It was like I was experimenting for a long time, trying to figure out how to get everything to sound good and how to
Yeah.
play better. But
Was that a long
that,
process trying to get that sorted out?
yeah. I probably have maybe like a year's worth of material before I started actually putting stuff
Yeah.
out. And I would just go. I lived on a farm, like in a big house back then, and we had this attic space where I had all my music stuff, and I would just go up there every day or every couple of days and just record. I have like a bunch of just demos of trash, just nothing good. It's not like worth listening to, but it was like the experimentation process. So it turned out good in the end. But
Was that those music, with some of them are featured on your 2012 to 2016 album?
yeah, some of
Yeah.
that would be that. Yep. Yeah.
Do you remember, the artists that, inspired you to do that kind of thing? Was there anyone that stood out for you?
Yeah, there were a couple. Phil Elverum of Mount Erie. I really liked Mount Erie and the microphones back then, and his recordings had this quality that was lo-fi, not
Yeah.
perfect. Bonnie Prince Billy, like Will Oldham, his music, all his Palace records, that was also really inspiring to me because
Mm.
it was this imperfect music
Yeah.
that spoke to me anyway, and it kind of showed like, okay, I don't need to be the greatest musician to start somewhere. I think I was listening to a lot of Nick Drake at the time too, which now
Mm.
listening
Yeah.
back, I can hear a lot of
I
that
can
in
hear
it.
that as well.
Yeah.
What genre would you classify your music as? Because when I was trying to write that introduction, I was thinking, folk, you've got rock, you've got
Yeah. Maybe you can tell me. I don't know.
I'm gonna stick to folk. I think,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, and it's very acoustic, isn't it?
Uh-huh. Yeah. I think
The
of I always say indie rock when people ask me,
Yeah.
but indie rock is such a catch-all. It's so big.
Mm.
Maybe indie folk. I do
Yeah.
usually add like there's folk elements to it. Um, I think it depends on when you're listening to, because Sweet Spell was probably more rock than folk.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, somewhere in there I land.
Do you do you prefer to, with your music and when you're writing, do you prefer to do that with, a guitar, or do you prefer to write on a piano, or do you kind of just do it acoustically without any instruments and kind of just like poetry kind of thing?
Mm. Always guitar,
Yeah.
almost always. There have been songs that piano has been the primary instrument, but
Mm.
most often it's a guitar.
It's the
And
versatility, isn't it?
yeah, I think it forms the foundation of the song a lot of the times for me, and from there I can add other instruments. There are times where I'll start with a guitar part for the whole song, and then after adding piano or lead guitar, I'll go back and rework the guitar part. But almost always the guitar part informs the whole song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that a long process to do? Because when if I'm recording a guitar, I'll record and then I'll just, I'll have self-doubt and then I'll be thinking, okay, yeah, I'll
Yeah.
redo all of that. Is that Is that something that you seem to like struggle with, or do you constantly feel the need to make it better or change it?
Do you mean like from the writing perspective or just
Yeah,
from the recording
just
perspective?
from recording perspective.
Um, yeah, it depends because sometimes I'll do a take and I'll feel like it has a like a spark to it. Like
Yeah.
I record it and I listen to it and it's not perfect, but I like it. Like there's enough nuance and I just feel like it's the right take.
Do you find that happens often?
Not all the time, no.
No.
It's yeah, I do retrack a lot. But when I'm recording, that's basically what I'm doing is just recording over and over until I I repeat it a lot, and I think that helps me
Yeah.
know how I want it to sound and how I want to play it. But oftentimes it's reworked a number of times. It's very rare that I have like the first recording I do I
Yeah.
keep. It's pretty rare. Yeah.
When you're so, can I just take it back to like
Yeah, for
when
sure.
you first started? So you said you were on GarageBand a lot. Were you writing on things that you're experiencing at the time? How old were you when you were?
I was probably 23.
So were you
Yeah,
writing based on experiences you had, or were you kind of just like telling stories, telling things that you just wanted to express?
a little bit of both, I would say.
Yeah.
Some of it's definitely influenced by things I experienced, and there's also an element of trying to write a story and trying to write it so that people hear it and can relate to it, like can kind of see
Yeah, yeah,
themselves in
yeah.
the song.
I think
Um,
that you do that quite well. It's the way, it's not like in your face, it's the subtleness of when you're singing. It makes
yeah,
you feel like, you're there in the room with you, if that makes sense.
yeah. Thank you.
No,
Yeah,
it's my
yeah.
pleasure. Is it a long process to get a song right? Or
Now, yeah. Nowadays, I'd say it takes me a lot longer to get a song to where I feel it's finished.
is that because of the
In,
platform that you think you have or that you have?
I think I've grown in my awareness of what I can do when I'm writing and recording. I know a lot more about mixing now and
Yeah.
just different, even where to put microphones and
Mm.
how to do it as I'm going. Like in 2012 when I started, there are some songs on albums that I have that I didn't even have the microphone on. I just had my like MacBook speakers recording the guitar. Like I would just put it in front of the amp and record it. So coming from there, like where I can do a song very quickly, um, and and I love that. Like
Yeah.
I'm not saying that I wish I knew
No,
more because
absolutely.
I liked the limitation that the early songs show, and but I do think that now, having done it so many times, I do have like a higher. I don't know. I know what I'm capable of, I guess. So I want to do my best when I'm recording something, but still leave room for the imperfection to shine through.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Is it, when you're writing on these albums, do you feel like you have certain songs that you don't really like, or do you put out
Mm.
everything that you do like?
Um, Everything that I put out, I feel has something that grabbed me initially
Mm.
when I was writing it. It has to feel special to me. Oftentimes, that specialness is more, I notice it more at the beginning. And then the longer I spend working on a song, the harder it is for me to like remember what the specialness was, if that makes sense, or to hear
Yeah.
it like freshly. Um, but for most of the things that I put out, I still feel like there's some kind of spark there, or I trust myself that like the original idea that I heard, I think it was good enough to
Yeah.
warrant putting out. But I do put out things that I am unsure of. I sometimes will finish a song and feel like I could put this out, I could skip it, but a lot of times I will get messages from people or emails and they'll say, hey, like this song is my favorite. of yours, and it's a song that I was like, oh wow, I could have left that just
Yeah.
like on my hard drive and not put it out, but I decided to, and someone has a favorite song now. So I feel like I'm not the best judge, I try to let people listen to it, and
Yeah.
if it's for them, then that's great.
Do you feel like the platform that you have now, because you've got a big platform? I mean, last year it was 18.1 million listeners. Is that crazy to hear?
It's crazy to hear.
722,000 hours,
It's very crazy.
181 countries. I mean, that's like,
Yeah.
that has to be, because when did you first start getting traction when you started writing? Do you remember when that moment was?
I remember I started only putting my songs out on Bandcamp. Are you familiar with that platform?
I've heard of it, yeah.
Yeah, it's basically like people can pay what they want to download it. And I remember putting it out on Bandcamp and sharing it with my friends, and like my brother had friends he would share it with, and people would reach out now and then, and that was awesome. Like the fact that anyone heard it was cool to me.
Yeah.
I got my stuff put on Spotify in 2017, I think. And
oh wow, so quite a big gap between 2012
and yeah, so probably 5 years that it was not on streaming services. But once I got it on Spotify, I think it took maybe a couple years to reach like 30,000 listeners per month or something, which even then was like, I can't believe this many people are listening. And yeah, certainly now I'm like totally humbled and don't have any explanation as to how there's that many people listening.
Because you're an amazing artist. I mean,
yeah, thank you.
Do you remember, was it between 2012 and 2015 you were kind of just like rehearsing your craft, or were you taught or like doing gigs and doing other certain things as well?
Yeah, I was doing gigs on a pretty small scale. I wasn't thinking too much about growing my audience. It was more like I loved recording music, and I wanted to just keep my process so that I could do it as long as I wanted. And I think with time it got easier for me to just keep recording and really lean into like what I wanted to be doing. I try not to pay too much attention to the numbers, because it can kind of mess with you.
Loud.
Like like I think last December or something, I noticed that I had like 900,000 monthly listeners on Spotify, which was I was like, it was crazy. It was like, this is someone else's life. I don't understand. And then, but then like, so I'm obviously like blown away, super grateful. And then maybe a month or two goes by and I see the numbers start going down. And that started like messing with me. I was like, oh no, like, it's like you're given this.
Come back.
Yeah. But it's obvious, like I never controlled it in the first place. So I didn't want to be subject to feeling sad if the numbers went down or feeling good if they go up. So
I think that's a fair way of looking at it. When you first started recording, was that, you had a certain song that you have now that is your favorite, and that maybe other people don't listen to it as much, but you want it to get more airtime?
When I start, like, from my whole like catalog, do I have a favorite? Gosh, it's a tough question.
No, that is, because I think like your 2012 to 2016 album is like a 3-hour album.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about that was they were separate albums on Bandcamp, like back when I started. Really? Yeah, so I think like the first 10 songs were an album, and then I did a bunch of like EPs, like 3 or 4 songs. And when I put them on Spotify, I'm just remembering this. When I went to put them on Spotify, at the time they had you pay for every album you put on. Like you would pay, let's say like $15 to put an album or an EP out. So I was going to put all those albums and EPs out, and it was going to be like $20 times 9 or something. It was going to be like $180. So I was like, okay, let me just put all
Pile
this
it.
together, one album, and
Cheated the system.
yeah, a little bit, a little bit. But now I'm like, I'm glad that it looks like that, because it is a collection of songs from a period of time where I was just like
Yeah,
working it out.
I think it's a good story because like when you listen, when it like you can scroll through, pick a certain song, and it's always going to be different. And I think that in itself is impressive because the amount of songs that you have on there and between that period of time, it was like you're experimenting with a lot of different things and trying to find yourself as an
Yeah.
artist. Do you feel, I mean, do you feel that way? Do you feel like that was like an experimentation, or do you feel like there was one, I don't know, one song that you enjoyed making and then you tried to make that happen?
Yeah. Well, I think yes to both. Like the
Mm,
that period was, when I look back on it, there's so much learning that was taking place while I was recording.
yeah,
I think Hobbs, I knew that was a special song when I recorded it. Uh, it felt like it had this, I don't know, it just gave me this feeling when I would listen to it. Like I don't know if you feel this way about your recording, but you're always trying to your boundary a little bit, and you're always trying to reach a little bit
yeah.
beyond it. That Hobbs felt like a song when I listened back to it that I felt like somebody else wrote it, or like
Oh, really?
I was just like outside of my own zone enough
Mm,
to feel like I was reaching for something. So I always knew that song was special, at least to me.
yeah,
But I think people have heard that same thing. Like people tell me that's their favorite song sometimes. So
yeah. Do
yeah.
you, when you mentioned about how you had EPs and albums and you were going to release them, do you find it easier to release, I don't know, a single, or do you find it easier to record an EP where it's just got a few songs so you can like really focus on those three songs, or do you find it easier that through an album you can paint this picture of whatever the album's based off of?
Yeah. I would say that's changed too with
Yeah,
time. I think now I'm more focused on writing one song at a time, and really focusing heavily on making each individual song its own thing. And then if it makes sense to put it together in an album, I'll do that.
yeah,
Um, I think streaming also, like people, I mean, myself included, my attention span with music is short.
yeah.
And I think people are more likely to listen to one or two songs all the way through than they are to listen to like a full album or
Mm,
something. So I like to put out singles and have it
yeah,
like more regular releases and more easily digestible for people. But yeah, the way I'm writing now is one song at a time,
yeah.
basically. Yeah, yeah.
Do you find that anything helps that process while you're writing, or do you feel like you sit in a room, you're quiet, and you just get
Mm.
on with it?
Well, I come back to songs a lot, so it's many different sessions of working on it. I think that helps, like having
Yeah,
time in between um, the recording days to really think about the song and get time away from it. Also, just to like listen back to the mix that I have and figure out
mm,
what I want to change. Um, yeah, I like to take my time with songs now. I used to like rush them through, and I could because I was recording everything myself. But now I'm working with a friend of mine, and we're recording a lot of my new stuff in a studio space in the city that I live in.
yeah.
So I kind of need him to be there with me to get stuff done.
Do you, when like you're recording, do you find it easier? Wait, so when you are recording, if
Hmm.
it's got a guitar, a piano, or like multiple instruments on it, do you find it easier to do that by yourself, or do you find that easier to do it with other people in the room
A
with you?
good question. Um, Definitely easier to do it by myself because I can
Mm,
kind of control. I mean, I can do it as many
yeah,
times as I want. Um, I think it's been good for me to learn how to do it with another person in the room. And I think that, especially like um, the friend I'm talking about, his name's Levi, and we've been working on music together for like 10 years. So in like he played in my band when I was first trying to play shows. But So having someone that I trust and who like knows me very well, I think that helps
Yeah.
a lot. He does a good job of like allowing me to get my best performance out, and I do feel comfortable recording with him. I think for vocals, I have a much better time recording them by myself because I can really like dial in and
Yeah.
kind of
Focused.
really
Yeah.
focus on how I want the words to sound and getting the right tone of my voice and everything.
Do you think that's changed over time, or like, because at the start were you self-conscious about what you were doing, or did you kind of just go in with a free mindset?
Um, Definitely self-conscious
Yeah.
about my voice. I think it's like,
It's probably natural, isn't it, really?
yeah, I don't think it ever goes away. I think that like when mixing songs, I always have to check my vocal level and think like, okay, is this loud enough that people will hear it? Because I think we all, at least I have a tendency to put my vocals a little lower in the mix because I'm afraid of, I mean, that's a really vulnerable thing. Like your voice, you're putting yourself out
Yeah.
there, and you don't want to be too
No,
out there.
exactly.
But I always felt like it was important for me to just accept how my voice sounded and not try to make it sound different from what it
Yeah.
naturally was. And I think over time it's gotten easier for me to really like lean into that and trust that my voice sounds good, or like I'm allowed
Yeah.
to
Do
sing
you
the way I want.
find that you focus more now than you did at the start, or do you feel like you can still have that relaxed element even though you've got way more followers or listeners than you do at the start?
Yeah, it's a good question. I feel I feel the same as when I started. Like I'm still very much focused on recording and trying to push myself and make songs that I think sound good and are a stretch for me.
Yeah.
Um, I kind of feel like I don't try to think too much about the numbers, and
Mm.
I don't try to think about whether a song will track well with
Yeah.
an audience if I do X, Y, or Z to it.
Do you
Um,
do you feel like that will end at some point, or do you feel like you'll always, have this idea that it doesn't matter? Do you feel like they will always be like that?
I don't know. Good question. Well, one thing that's important to note is that I have a full-time job aside from music.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so my music income is just additional to what I
Mm.
like. So I think if I had to pay my bills with music, I might think about it differently. Like
Yeah.
I might start like what you're saying to consider. Um, I don't know if that would happen. If I would be thinking
Yeah.
like, is this going to do well? Am I going to make enough money to pay my
I
my
think
rent?
I think clearly the way that you're doing it now, because it's obviously working, because your music, I think, like you were saying that you're self-conscious about your voice, but I do like to compliment the guest, but your voice, I think it's just got that, like, it's very easy to listen to. It's not,
Mm.
you said about the mixing and making sure you weren't all out there, but I think you do that quite well where you're there, but it's easy to listen to, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Nice. So you said you had a full-time job. Does that make it difficult to make music, or do you find yourself, at your job, you're doing your thing, and then you think, oh, that could be a good lyric, and then you go and you
Mhm.
write it down? Do you feel like music affects it at any point, or do you feel like,
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely it's less time that I have to
mm,
work on music, but I've always had that challenge sort of like when I started recording, I was in college and I was working, and I had less time when I started recording. I think since I like finished college and
yeah,
have been working, I have a good flow of how much time I want to spend on music. I think that's another benefit for me is like I don't know if I could I say this and I haven't tried it, but I don't know if I could go every day and try to work on something.
yeah,
I don't know if I would get tired of it. I do feel that time away from the stuff I'm recording is helpful. Like
Eventually brings you back to it anyway.
I get some space from it. I also, like what you're saying, I have time to write lyrics or like think about what the emotion of the song should say lyrically. So right now it's a good balance. I'm also not really interested in touring.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like I play shows here and there, but yeah, I'm married and I like being at home. I'm not trying to go sleep on people's floors,
Does that not appeal to you? Is that
no.
not?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm open to touring.
Yeah.
But it feels like I usually just trust the timing of just the natural timing of my life.
Yeah.
And I feel like if that time comes, I'll know when it is and I'll be ready to do it. But right now it just feels like I don't want to be like forcing myself to do something that doesn't feel natural or wanted.
That's fair enough. So let's say, right, you got offered a tour.
Mm-hmm.
So whereabouts are you based? Sorry.
I'm in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Right. So
yeah.
do your manager or whoever calls you up, say, we got a tour for you. What would be your dream? You have 4 destinations anywhere in the world. It's very, like, I've not asked this question because I had Sam Birchwood on. It's not my kind of question, but like, I think it's interesting. But like, do you have like certain destinations you want to go to or tour?
Oh yeah, for sure. I would love to go to other countries. I think Australia would be awesome.
Yeah.
I haven't played in Europe, but I've heard that Europe treats.
I heard England's quite well, actually. I think England's a very good destination. You should definitely visit. Definitely should definitely come
England,
here. Yeah. So England's on there. So.
I've heard that Europe like really appreciates touring artists in a different way than like in the States, but I would probably also pick Japan and gosh, I don't know where else. Probably the west coast of the US would be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever see that I know you said you don't see yourself on that like time scale, when it happens, but do you maybe wish that it did? I mean, it might be a self-answering question, but do you wish that changed, or are you quite happy recording an album and then leaving it there?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't necessarily wish that it would change. Like, I don't find myself waking up and being like, oh man, I wish I was hitting the road today or something. Yeah. I think if it made sense, like financially, if there was like a market for it, I think that I would be open to that. I will add, like, I don't work with a team of any kind. Like, I'm the only person involved in my music. Yeah. So I don't have like a manager or
so you're all self.
Yeah. Which
that's impressive.
Well, so thanks. It's impressive, but it's also limiting in a way. Like
I can see that.
Because I don't know how to organize a tour and like do all that stuff. So I recognize that's like a limitation of what I choose to do. If the right opportunity came along, like to work with a manager or something, I would probably do that if it made sense for me and like my goals, but I haven't encountered that yet.
Do you feel like you prefer being your own boss and your own like your own artist, or do you feel like do you feel like you prefer it like that?
Yeah, for now, yeah. And up until now, I've really enjoyed learning. I've learned so much about how to get my music out onto streaming. I've learned about like collecting royalties, figuring out like how to register songs. I've made great friends too in the music community, and up until now, I've just been very grateful to have the audience that I do, and I want to like keep it as real as possible. And also, I would hope that people listening or watching me would be thinking to themselves, if this guy can put his music out there and do it like this, then I can too. Like, you don't need a manager, you don't need people in the industry doing stuff for you. Like, you can do it yourself. Again, like, there are limits to that. Like, there are things that I can't do for myself, but at the same time, it's like I feel like I've done a lot though.
Yeah, I mean, that's very inspirational because I like that you've said that, because obviously I'm just starting out, and I'm sure people listening,
Yeah.
they're just starting out, because I think it's nice to hear someone say that, because obviously you're on your media and you see Selena Gomez touring again.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's nice to know that there are people out there that are doing their own kind of thing. If you get me, do
Yeah.
you feel like that, that limitation that you were talking about, like when you were first starting out, do you feel like that affected you anyway, or do you feel like you've always been able to deal with that?
I think I just knew what was important to me,
Mm,
like to be able to record and put my music out and just create a large body of work and improve my skills at recording and writing. And I think that in the end was the most important thing to me. Like, so I mean, I'll add, like, there are going to be artists who are like, yeah, I want to get out and tour, and you
yeah,
should, like, you
yeah,
totally should,
absolutely.
and do the things you need to do to make it happen. But at the end of the day, it's all about like just doing what you want to do.
Yeah,
And I think that musicians are also fed a lie in that you need X, Y, and Z
mm,
to happen for you before you can do anything else. I find a lot of that is not true, and a lot of it is for other people to make money off of you.
mm.
So um,
No, I can
I,
see that. Yeah,
it's like the industry is huge, and there are so
mm,
many people saying what they can do for you, and if it's not what you got into music to do, why pursue those things? I think a lot of it too is like social role. Like we see
yeah.
this role of an artist and we think like, okay, if I want to be a musician, I gotta tour this many days a year, I gotta have a manager, I gotta have a publicist, I gotta
Blow
have
up
like,
overnight.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And it's kind of like, man, that's a lot of pressure. Like you should just put stuff out there and let it
yeah.
grow. And like I think time is the greatest tool that you have to
Mm.
do what you want to do, like, and figure it out as you go. You won't know it all at first, but
Do you see yourself always doing music as you get older, or do you feel like there will be a certain point where you kind of just stop?
where I hang it up.
Yeah,
Um, I would like to record for as long as possible. Like,
yeah,
I think even 10 years ago, I would have said, all I really want to do is be able to make records whenever I want to, and have like no one telling me when I can and can't put something
yeah,
out. So yeah, I also think it's cool, like looking back on what I've done so far, I can see how much I've learned from when I started. And I think it's interesting to consider how 10 or 20 years from now, I'll look back on now and be like,
yeah.
wow, here's what I didn't know then.
No, I get that. I get that a lot, and I think that is also something important to hear, because you're always being, fed everything about how you need to do this.
Yeah.
Oh, and you also need to do this, and then
Yeah.
that. I think it's nice because obviously you're making a killing at it. Like, you're actively very popular with
Thanks.
how,
Yeah.
like, last month 900,000 monthly listeners. I think it just goes to show that, so you've been doing this for about 10 years, 12 years.
Yeah.
Do you find
2012, I
that
probably
crazy?
started. Yeah.
Do you find that?
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. The time goes fast. I don't know.
Do you do you when you're recording, let's say you do an album, do you feel like that album's a part of you in a way, or do you feel like when let's say I want to record an album, do you feel like you have a certain image for that album to take, or do you feel like every song tells its own story relating to a certain subject? Or
More the latter. I
yeah,
don't I don't I don't have a album plot
mm,
figured out.
yeah,
There were, like, on I think it was on Through the Tall Grass, I did have some songs where I used the same guitar riff as like a motif throughout the
mm,
album, but that's probably the most I thought about how to connect songs on an album. It's mostly, an album for me is mostly a collection of the songs I've done in the last
yeah.
whatever period of time.
Do you feel like it makes it easier trying to do that, or do you feel like it challenges you in a way that you
Hmm.
enjoy?
Um, Well, there are lots of artists whose music I love, and their albums are obviously woven to, like, every
Mm,
song plays a part in the album. I just think, for me, I like the ability to take each individual song wherever it seems to want to go,
yeah,
and not have to think about, like, oh, I gotta keep it in this
yeah.
sort of theme.
It's the free
Um,
free space you get, because I think
yeah,
that's what
yeah,
music really is, isn't it? It's a space where you can demonstrate your ability, where you can do things that you want to do, if you get
yeah,
me.
yeah.
Do you So I asked Sam Birchwood this actually, and I think it's a really interesting perspective to gain. When you're listening to an artist, do you enjoy a certain artist for their composition and their arrangement of instruments, or do you enjoy another artist because of their songwriting, or do you feel like you like every song as a whole?
Hmm. I mean, there are definitely artists who do things that I can't do that I admire very much, like Sufjan Stevens, for example.
Mm,
His compositions are so ornate and, like, full of detail, and heavily layered, and I like that a lot. Um, I think I listen to music for various reasons.
yeah.
It's not often all for the same reason, because there are very simple songs that I really enjoy just as much. It's just kind of a different vibe and a different feeling.
Do you when you're listening to Sufjan Stevens or whoever, do they inspire you in a way, or do you feel like you try and stay as your own artist?
Probably both.
Yeah,
I think listening to good music will sometimes give me ideas of things I want to try.
yeah.
And I feel like that speaks to, like, I'm still working within my own limitations
Mm,
as an artist, and to emulate someone else is to just try to say it in my own words,
yeah.
basically.
Does that happen a lot for you? Do you feel like that, you know, wanting to try something out, that happens a lot for you as an artist?
Yeah, it's definitely not the only place I write from, but
Mm,
sometimes it is. Sometimes it's like I'll hear a song and be like, "Oh man, yeah, like that guitar tone or something, or that
mm,
the way those pianos sound.
yeah,
Like, I want to
absolutely.
try and do that in the way that I know how." And usually it's like a poor
Yeah,
copy, but it's a step in a different direction that I wouldn't have taken otherwise.
yeah. Do you, when you're listening to these artists, are there certain artists that you think would go well on some of your songs, or would you want to work with in the future?
Oh, to collaborate?
Yeah,
I haven't really thought about that. I think, well, there are instruments that I try to emulate, like slide guitar, like a pedal
yeah.
steel
Bon
guitarist.
Iver kind of thing, like Forema,
Yeah,
Roslin.
yeah. To collaborate with, like, a slide guitarist who's
Yeah.
really good at what they do would be awesome. I'm also not. I can't play strings like cello and violin,
Yeah.
so to have that instrumentation added to a song of mine would be pretty cool. See what it
Do,
sounds like.
with songs that you've already made, is that, when you're listening back to, do you listen to your own music, or do you find that,
Sometimes, yeah,
yeah, when
yeah,
you're
not.
listening back, do you think, oh, cello would have been really good there?
Oh,
Do
yeah.
you do you find that?
I I I think I have a lot of just, like, closure about the stuff that
Yeah,
I finish, and I'm just, even if I did have a thought like that, I would probably just say, like, well, that was the best I could do at the
it's done
time, and
now.
that's, like,
Yeah,
yeah, and that's what I thought was the best choice. So I don't I don't ever regret any choices in my,
yeah,
like, old stuff. I think I try,
yeah,
if anything, if I notice something like that, I'll try to think about, okay, let me, like, note that for a
yeah. Note
future
it down for the
song and try
next.
to do that.
Does that happen a lot? Does that, you're listening to whatever and you're noting down certain things in preparation for your next song? Does that happen a lot for you, or do you
Mm,
go in with a blank slate?
usually blank slate.
Yeah,
Yeah, I try to write from like a forward thinking perspective,
yeah,
because I think it just opens the door more to being able to reach for something new, as opposed to trying to do something again or do something different.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've taken up a lot of your time, and you're an inspirational guest. I think what you were saying for the the younger audiences or whoever's listening, just wanting to get into music, it's nice to have that rekindling of what you want to hear.
Yeah.
I just want to finish on this last question. Do you have any advice for anyone looking to get into music, or as songwriters, do you have anything that you would have wanted to hear?
I would say
It's a really tough question. So
I'm like, where to start? I would say like, try to identify what you want to get out of music, and try to separate that from what you see in the world as being successful as an artist. Like, seek creative success and not commercial success.
Yeah.
I think there's a difference, and I think that if at the end of the day, like, you write a song and you can listen back to that, that's like a huge creative win, and that should be the only thing that matters. Like, yeah, do what you want to do. Involve people who are supportive of you and can give you good feedback. Like, have friends who are like trying to do the same thing or something similar, or maybe a little bit further ahead on the road, and like take notes from them. But I mean, ultimately, like, I would just say you should put stuff out. Like, you can, it's easy. Time is your friend. There's no like you stand to lose nothing. Like, you put something out there, and I don't know, it's just like all possible. Like, you put something out there and anyone can listen to it, and it might suck to feel like no one's listening to it for a while, but if the audience is there, they'll find it. And it's all about, like, yeah, just do what you want to do, and like, don't let anyone else tell you have to do 10 other things before you do it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for giving us a slight bit of your time. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
You've been
thanks
incredible.
for asking me.
No, absolutely. Thank you very much.
Yeah, good luck with your own music, man.
Thank you very much. Good luck with yours.
Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right. See you, man.
See you later.